AM 590 KXSP Omaha's ESPN Radio. Pull them belts tight, because it's time for the front stretch. Presented by Kosiski Auto Parts at 50th and I Street.
Good morning to you, and thank you for joining us for another edition of the front stretch. We promise it's going to be a hell of a show, as we've got a lot to cover. In turn one, we're going to talk about off-season changes. Some of it's going to bleed into turn two, because there's a lot of mixing up and things that have happened in the offseason. We're going to talk about some of the stuff that have happened down at Daytona, like the Kyle Larson incident during turn two. And there's this guy we interviewed a while ago as a part of the Legends of the Dirt. Let's get rid of it. No one cares about Brian Birkhofer. Let's talk all Danica Patrick.
Danica Patrick was at Daytona?
All the time. In fact, we're no longer the front stretch. We are Danica Patrick Fans Show. We're just going to talk all Danica all the time. I know, you're all booing. We're just kidding with you. We promise you we will only talk Danica news when it has to do with racing.
When she actually does something on the track.
Exactly. Like, for instance, when she wins the pole at Daytona, becoming the first woman in history to do that. That is newsworthy. It is not newsworthy who she is divorcing, who she is dating, who she is kissing. No one cares about that crap. We're not going to talk about that crap. We're going to talk about what she has done on the track. So, without further ado, and by the way, we are just kidding. In turns 3 and 4, we're going to finish up the Legends of the Dirt series. We had a great conversation with Brian Burkhofer during, I think I was thinking, way back in November, we talked to him. It was during the Oregon State bowl game, if I'm remembering correctly. So we talked to him about his offseason changes and what he has planned on in 2013. We'll play that for you in turns 3 and 4, so make sure you're listening for that. Let's talk about off-season changes. Probably one of the, if you guys could pick one storyline that has probably risen above the rest.
For anybody I know that follows NASCAR, the number one thing that I keep hearing a lot of and I keep talking to people about, the new look of the cars.
The Gen 6 car?
The Gen 6 car, the new look.
I can't decide if it's Dodge leaving, Kenseth moving, or the Gen 6 car. Andrew, what do you think? Which one do you think it is?
I was kind of go with a lot of the driver changes, like you said, with Kenseth leaving and moving in. Especially what we saw this week. I think that's just incredible. The two drivers flip-flopping, basically, and they both look good, and they're two new rides. I'm talking Logano and Kenseth right now.
Yeah, and obviously, Kenseth leaving Roush wasn't really an off-season move. We knew it was going to happen since about May of last year, but everything was finalized. Everything's ready to roll. And but let's get with the start. Dodge leaving on a high note. Who would have ever thought Dodge would have won a championship and then left the series?
They might have left the series, but if you watch that Brad Keselowski championship speech when Roger Penske got up there and talked, he kind of left a hint that maybe Dodge might come back to 2014 in NASCAR.
2004, 2015, I think Dodge will be back. Nobody really knows when, because it all depends on when contracts expire with manufacturers and who's willing to take that risk. Dodge doesn't necessarily have the best history of winning championships. I mean, they won one finally after being in the sport back into the sport for, I believe it was 12 years or 13 years away since their run when they came back with Ray Evernham Motorsports. So, yeah, Dodge leaving was definitely a big note. Kenseth leaves Roush Fenway Racing for Joe Gibbs Racing to take over driving the number 20 car. Dollar General ups their commitment with the 20 team to 17 races. Home Depot comes back to 21 races. Jason Ratcliffe, who was the crew chief for the 20 team last year, will remain as a crew chief for the 20. Matt Kenseth leaving his longtime crew chief, Jimmy Finnick. Think there's going to be any kind of issues there with those guys?
It's either going to be, feast or famine. Sometimes change is good.
Yeah.
A lot of people don't like change. Sometimes change is for the better, and, maybe he can be a little bit more productive this year. Joey
Logano heads over to Penske Racing. Penske Racing also heads over to the Ford camp. Joey Logano is going to drive the 22, and Todd Gordon will sit down in his crew chief for the 22 team. What we've seen so far at Daytona, and obviously we're recording on Wednesday night, so we've seen the Sprint Unlimited race, the practices, and those things. 22 doesn't look too bad.
I think it looks great. I think it looks great.
But to what you just said there, sometimes change is good. Maybe that's exactly what Joey Logano needed, was to get outside of Joe Gibbs Racing, get outside of the shadow of the 20 car, because it is kind of, Tony did a lot to make that a legendary car, and now Matt Kenseth, who is more than capable of putting that car back in winner's circle into victory lane, So maybe we'll see some good things out of Joey over at Penske Racing. Ricky Stenhouse Jr. takes over for Matt Kenseth in the 17, retains many of the sponsorships that Matt Kenseth and the 17 team had secured. Plus, they bring on Scott Graves to take over for the crew chief of the 17. And Ricky and Scott, they used to work together when Ricky ran a few races last year in the 6 car for Roush Fenway Racing up in the Cup Series. So he's got a little familiarity there with Scott Graves. I think probably one of the shockers, Kevin Harvick announced last year he will not be returning to Richard Childress Racing in 2014. He will race for Richard Childress through the end of his contract in 2013. Gil Martin will return as his crew chief. I've been digging a lot, and neither Tony Stewart or Kevin Harvick has said for sure that he is going to Stewart-Haas Racing. Everyone's expecting it, but I think they're just finalizing the paperwork and the contract details before they make a formal announcement.
The last thing you want to do is make a formal announcement, and then all of a sudden something happens and you don't have Harvick.
We've seen this in the offseason with some of the stuff you and I have been working on, that things can change in a heartbeat. Everything looks like it's going the right way, and then there's one sticking point on a contract, and all of a sudden you got egg on your face because you're saying, oh, no, this is going to happen, and then all of a sudden it doesn't happen. So, it's going to be interesting. Budweiser and Jimmy Johns have both said they're going to be moving with Kevin to his new home, which, again, everyone is predicting to be Stewart-Haas Racing. Sam Hornish moves back down to Nationwide. Now, Sam was taking over in the 22 for the suspended A.J. Allmendinger over at Penske Racing. Since Joey Logano's coming over and take over full-time in the 22, Sam heads back down to Nationwide. I think that's a good move for Sam. He's making strides, but he's just not quite ready to take over the reins completely for a full Cup season. Let's see. Jimmy Finnick, longtime Kenseth crew chief, is now the crew chief for Carl Edwards in the 99 team.
That's interesting.
That is very interesting. Obviously, Jimmy Finnick, highly respected crew chief, and Carl Edwards needs a shot in the arm after the 2012 season.
What was the outcome with Carl's longtime crew chief last year? I know he had left for some health reasons for a while.
As far as I know, he's not. He's not back.
That was just because of health reasons. He's not back.
Yeah.
So it wasn't like a disciplinary or you're just not doing it good enough or nothing like that.
No, and the comments Carl has made in the offseason have stayed true to that statement. And you can usually read between the lines.
Oh, yeah.
But the things I've heard Carl say was that Bob worked night and day to try to get that back, the ship righted. He just simply worked himself into such a stressful situation that he had to get away from it.
You know, right away, we've talked 7 points, 7 big changes going on in NASCAR. Some of them we kind of anticipated, some of them we didn't, but in general, there's a lot of change.
Yeah.
But when you go back to the Gen 6 car, I think you and I were talking, and that's just, and not to change the subject here, but when you look at all these changes and then you throw in that Gen 6 car, which I believe you were telling me off the air, a lot of the drivers are like, boy, this is way different than the car we've been driving.
It's the car pre-COT. It's what they had back in 2006, which was the last year they raced what you could call the Gen 4 car.
I mean, this is change on change here.
Yeah, a lot of teams. There's a couple of teams moving manufacturers. There's a couple of drivers moving teams, crew chiefs. A lot of new situations, and then you throw in on top of it, everyone's got a brand new car. Wrapping up some of the other changes, A.J. Allmendinger has inked a deal with Phoenix Racing to race in the 51 for 4 races. That's because Kurt Busch has moved over to race the 78 at Furniture Row. Regan Smith will take over Phoenix Racing in the 51 for an undisclosed amount of races, and Austin Dillon will come up and race for an undisclosed amount of races. Tony Gibson, who was Newman's crew chief for all but 4 races of 2012, will now be calling shots on top of the 10 teams crewed box for Danica Patrick. Ryan Newman is now paired back up with his former crew chief, Matt Borland. Newman and Borland spent a better part of Ryan's early career together in ARCA, Nationwide, and Sprint Cup when he was over at Penske Racing. So a lot of changes, and you can kind of see it in some of the practices. I think some of these shakeups have been good, but it's early. We are race 1 of 36. There's a whole lot of racing left to do. We'll be back in just a few minutes to talk about some of the Gen 6 changes, what we've seen down at Daytona, and then in Turn 3, we'll wrap up the Legends of the Dirt Series. This is The Front Stretch, presented by Kosiski Auto Parts on AM 590, Omaha's ESPN Radio.
This is The Front Stretch on AM 590, powered by Kosiski Auto Parts. Quality used parts at an affordable price. Now, back to The Front Stretch.
We are headed into Turn 2 here on The Front Stretch, presented by Kosiski Auto Parts. 51st and I Street, 731-4592 is the number you can call. Give Andrew a buzz and get your car or truck back on the road in full working order. And also, don't forget about the battery deal that Kosiski Auto Parts has. $25 for a battery, $15 for a full lifetime warranty, and you've got yourself a battery with a full lifetime warranty. If that baby goes dead, anything goes wrong with it, bring it back into Kosiski Auto Parts, bring your receipt, and you're going to get a brand new one right off you're going to get a brand new one out of their factory. And they get it because they bring in so many salvaged cars. Battery's perfectly fine whether a car is destroyed or not. They'll test it, make sure everything's above par, and you've got yourself to you, it's brand new.
And you know what's even more special about that? You get to meet Andrew Kosiski.
I know. I like going in there quite a bit and just having a little talk with Andrew. All right, it just got weird again. Let's talk contract extensions for 2013. Kyle Busch, probably the biggest contract extension of the year, re-signs with Joe Gibbs Racing to stay in the 18 car, and rumor has it that it is a 5-year deal, but of course in NASCAR nothing is confirmed, and those contracts usually don't get released. I also heard that M&M's has re-signed with Joe Gibbs Racing for the same amount of time, the 5 years. It's kind of funny how those sponsorship contracts and the driver contracts, they reflect each other. Mm-hmm. It's almost like Joe Gibbs is making sure that his driver's paid for. Martin Truex Jr. ends up re-signing with Michael Waltrip Racing, and so does Napa. And if my research is correct, which it's probably not, I believe Napa is the only sponsor to sponsor a car for the entire season.
It's usually about right, I think.
I don't think there is another full-time sponsorship out there.
That's called a Napa know-how.
Exactly. Eric Almirola resigns with Richard Petty Motorsports. Todd Parrott will return as his crew chief. This one shocked me. Juan Pablo Montoya has re-signed with the 42 team for a multi-year deal. I guess I'm sitting here saying that Juan's not a schlup behind the wheel. He hasn't had that much success in NASCAR, but for crying out loud, what is Richard Petty Motorsports doing?
I don't get that.
Not Richard Petty, I'm sorry. Earnhardt Ganassi Racing. I mean, they seem to be going backwards as far as I'm concerned.
After last year's
Juan
performance,
Pablo Montoya can bring in a pretty ethnic crowd. I mean,
I'm not saying he's going to leave NASCAR.
It brings a whole new customer base to NASCAR. Why would they not want him there?
Okay, I'm not saying Earnhardt Ganassi doesn't want him there. I'm saying you're Juan Pablo Montoya. You have won everything under the sun except NASCAR. Why would you re-sign with a team who really hasn't done much for you when there was Joe Gibbs Racing, Roush Fenway Racing, Richard Petty Motorsports was looking for a driver. Phoenix Racing is out, but there was plenty of options for Juan to go out there and say, I'm tired of losing. Somebody put me into a better ride.
Well, they're research and development. Well, it's real easy. They are the only race team capable of producing a car that can run into a jet dryer at 200 mile an hour.
And on a side note, NASCAR has debuted their new track drying system called the Air Titan to do away with their old jet dryer system. The new system designed to speed up track drying time by 80% and is far less flammable. And the jet dryer jokes will never end. I don't think those will ever go away.
No.
And you kind of feel bad for the guy because everyone knows in no way was that his fault. That was just a complete
But it couldn't happen to anybody else.
When Juan Pablo Montoya's crew chief came across the rodeo.
You want to try that name again?
When Juan Pablo Montoya's crew Montoya's crew chief came across the radio last year and said, "Juan, we want you to blow away the competition, but that's not exactly what we wanted, or not exactly what we wanted you to do." I mean,
Eric Almirola also re-signs with Richard Petty Motorsports. Drew Blickenstoffel will return as the crew chief for Marcos Ambrose. Mark Martin has re-signed with the 55 team. He's going to race 24 races for Michael Waltrip Racing with an option of racing 2 more. Michael Waltrip and Brian Vickers will also fill time in the 55 car.
How many years does that make for Martin now?
40.
I wouldn't have a clue. He is.
You know who we can compare to Mark Martin around here locally? It seems like Glenn Roby.
Yeah, but Glenn's done. Mark Martin's still rolling.
Did Glenn retire this year?
He retired a couple years ago.
Oh, did he?
I thought he wheeled 1 car last year.
No.
And Mark's still doing it. 24 races, and he had a good year last year. I think if he'd have been full time in that race, he'd have been top 15. Probably.
He'd be a top 5.
I don't think he would have been top 5.
I think he'd have made the chase.
You think so?
Oh yeah.
Oh yeah.
He was up front almost every race.
Let's talk about the Gen 6 car. I have never felt more buzz behind a NASCAR season in the off season. There's been several seasons where silly season was just through the roof. A lot of changes, a lot of new, a lot of old stuff, but I have never heard such a buzz behind it. Drivers absolutely love this car. Crew chiefs absolutely love this car. It looks amazing out on the racetrack. The Sprint Unlimited I got to see last week under the lights at Daytona. It looked fantastic. It's less stable. You cannot do the bump drafting. We learned that very quickly in Unlimited practice and the Sprint Unlimited. I think this is going to be a car that is going to harken back to the days when NASCAR was in its prime.
I did see one clip, and I can't remember if it was on ESPN on TV or if it was actually going through the channels. There was one car, and I can't remember, and here's what struck me immediately, is on the right front bumper, they had body filler. They literally had body filler on the right front. The last couple of years, if you ever needed to patch a hole, you just got out some of that sticky metal and just popped it over. This was I think body filler, sanded down.
I think the reason why you saw that was because they had time to sit down in the pits and repair that with some stucco, as opposed to when they're in the race, they just stick it with that 200 mile an hour tape.
Stucco. That's fiberglass there.
That's not fiberglass. That's not fiberglass what they use to fix a...
Well, it ain't stucco. Stucco's what you put on the outside of your house.
Hey, we're both dumb. Let's get over it. But I'm really excited about this Gen 6 car. I think NASCAR has done a fantastic job with implementing it correctly. The only issue I've seen is that a lot of teams have just simply not had time to build the cars. So there's... The Sprint Unlimited during the practice, Carl Edwards went down there. They got into a wreck, 13 or 14 laps in. He was done. That was his practice. He had no backup car.
Well, Hendrick said he had to go home and pick 2 more cars up.
Yeah, they pulled out their backups and then they sent 2 more cars down there just in case.
That's nuts.
And that's just the way it is at Daytona. Anything can happen at any point in time. And you feel absolutely horrible for these guys because those guys down in the body shop and in the fab shops, they spent all the time working on those cars for it to make 15 laps and get destroyed.
The one driver, it seemed to me, that was kind of a disappointment in the 500 qualifying was Keselowski.
There was a lot of drivers that I was shocked. Kenseth, who did so good in the Sprint Unlimited, obviously won it, looked so great. I think he qualified outside the top 20. I want to say 26th.
Kenseth didn't win that. Harvick did.
Harvick, I'm sorry. It was Harvick I was talking about. Kenseth looked fantastic. And I don't even see where he qualified. Well, actually, it doesn't really matter where he qualified because for Daytona qualifying, the only person that matters is Danica Patrick, who qualified on the pole, and I believe Jeff Gordon,
who's on the outside,
who qualified outside him. After that, it doesn't matter. Where you qualified determines where you got set up for the Gatorade Duels, which obviously happened last night, and we recorded on Wednesday, so we really can't talk about it.
I think there's a story there with Jeff Gordon being in front row outside. You had just made the comment a little bit ago, Dan, that these Gen 6 cars are an awful lot, reminiscent of the cars before the car of tomorrow. Yep. Unstable.
Yep.
Jeff Gordon comes from that era.
Yeah.
Before the car of tomorrow.
That was his heyday.
Look out, Weekend Warriors. Here comes the Rainbow Warriors.
The only thing I really hope is he doesn't bring the mustache back.
No.
Come on. Bring it back.
No. There's two guys in this world who shouldn't wear mustaches, me and Jeff Gordon. Doesn't look good.
Okay.
Does not work at all.
Okay.
First off, takes me a year to grow one. And then I look like a... Never mind.
Caveman?
FCC rules here.
Yeah. They like to find me quite a bit. So let's talk about this season. We're really excited about it this season. We're going to have a lot of live shows, a lot of them having to do with the fact that there's going to be NASCAR races on Saturday night. And then we've got a couple of live shows to help promote the Charlie Clark Memorial, the race at I-80 Speedway, the Cornhusker Classic. We'll be talking with a couple of drivers to promote the Silver Dollar Nationals. Eldora. I think that's a pretty big storyline right there.
Yeah, right there. We're going to be watching that unfold all year long.
That's going to be awesome.
Busch.
Yeah. And I still haven't read that. Andrew, your grandpa, Bob Kosiski, was talking about, he'd heard that they're not going to let these ringers come in and race, that you're going to have a partial schedule in the nation or in the truck series in order to race. So
yeah, they were saying something like that. Like you have to run at least 6 races or something in order to get it. But I don't believe they can let that happen because they can't find enough drivers to fill in anyway. I don't believe.
Well,
so.
but they reduced the amount of drivers this year, so I think they're not going to have a problem. And they came down to 25 trucks.
Something like that. But you know what? With what you're saying, how many of those truck drivers are honest-to-goodness weekly dirt track racers? Really?
None.
Well, but
that's
the thing is
they don't want Bloomquist going there and just whip everybody.
I know, but
they don't want the legends of the dirt coming in there.
I'm looking at it from the standpoint, you let the dirt trackers come in here. You let the Scott Bloomquist, the Billy Moyers, the Donnie Morans, the Chubb Franks, you let those guys come in there. You could actually open up the door for a young rising star.
How are you going to open it up if you let these old guys come in
because
and race?
You're going to have the NASCAR truck teams there, and you got a young kid from Eldora who's racing weekly in a modified or a late model, and he comes in, he gets a ride, and I'm just hypothetically stating here with Busch.
How's he going to get that ride if all these legends are taking up the seats?
I'm not necessarily saying the legends. I'm just saying if somebody from Eldora gets in a truck at Eldora in front of the teams and shows off what they can do on the dirt.
Absolutely.
That's the point I'm trying to make.
I think NASCAR's trying, and this is all speculation because I haven't seen anything to say one way or another.
I'm waiting for my phone call.
I've seen it, yeah. Keep waiting. I've seen reports on jski.com that Scott, and it was onedirt.com, right? That was the one that broke the story that Scott Bloomquist is going to be racing for Kyle Busch in his truck series. So I don't know. NASCAR could come out and say you've got to have X amount of races committed this year before we'll let you race Eldora, because it is going to be kind of a prime thing. And I don't think they want ringers coming in and making their regulars look bad. Which they will. Scott Bloomquist gets behind the wheel of a dirt track. It's only going to take him 10 or 15 laps to get the hang of that thing, and he's going to start moving to the front.
Yeah, and the reason why that would happen is there was reports that they were going to be looking at more of a traditional Saturday night dirt track with the heats, maybe a consi and a feature, and I don't like that.
Well, it's not going to be. It's going to be July 24th, which is a Wednesday night.
Well, I'm just saying that they're going to run it on a Saturday night-like schedule where you got your heat races, your consi, your feature, and I don't like that because then you got all these other tracks that they go to that they don't have that format. I would be more in favor, look, we're already giving the fans what they want. We're putting NASCAR back on dirt, so just let them run their time trials and then run their race. Let the 30, 35 trucks come in, and if you make the race, you do. If you don't, you don't.
It's going to be a great season. I can't wait. Just in a few hours, the green flag at Daytona will be waving. I want to give a quick plug to one of our new sponsors. I'm going to be down at Quaker Steak and Lube making sure that they have plenty of beer. I know you two guys probably be joining me.
I don't like beer.
Yeah, I know you don't. You're trying to fast or whatever. I don't get that. I'll drink your share. How's that sound?
I'll help.
Quaker Steak and Lube is our official watering hole of the front stretch. We're going to be down there giving away or hanging out with Chris and all the waitresses down at Quaker Steak and Lube.
By the way,
thank them for being a new sponsor on the show.
Thank you. And if you guys didn't notice what I did to that steak when I ate it from there, my God, their steak was good.
Everything's good there.
You didn't even taste it.
Literally, I think that is the fastest piece of meat I've ever eaten.
And on that note, let's head into Turn 3 and let's wrap up the Legends of the Dirt series as we talk with Brian Birkhofer. We'll be back in just a few minutes as we're going to talk with Brian Birkhofer here on the Front Stretch, presented by Kosiski Auto Parts on AM 590, Omaha's ESPN Radio.
You're listening to The Front Stretch on AM 590, Omaha's ESPN Radio. Brought to you by Kosiski Auto Parts and Team PRP. Premium recycled parts at an affordable price.
Welcome back to the Front Stretch, presented by Kosiski Auto Parts. 51st and I Street. I've only been saying that about 50 times this year, and I can't seem to get it right. 731-4592 is the number you can call to get all of your parts, radiators, repair pieces, alternators, batteries. They've got everything you could possibly need to get your car or truck back on the road. And we're talking tonight as a part of the Legends of the Dirt series. We're wrapping it up in style. Brian Birkhofer, winner of the 2012 Silver Dollar Nationals. Brian, how you doing?
I'm doing great, man. Thanks for having me on.
We really appreciate you sitting down with us and having this conversation. And, we were putting this list together for the Legends of the Dirt series, and you're in some pretty good company. We've got Jimmy Owens have been on, Billy Moyer, Scott Bloomquist, Kyle Burke, Joe Kosiski, Steve Kosiski. You've been in some pretty good company, and we thought we can't leave out the Burke himself, and we got to get an interview with him. So
I appreciate it, man.
Well, I think a lot of people out there are going to agree that you definitely deserve to be a part of this Legends of the Dirt series. And if you wouldn't mind, start us off from the beginning. How did you get involved in dirt racing, and what got you started?
I was born in '72. My dad started racing the same year, so it's been a long time ago now. Now that I think about when you start saying when you were born, but he was racing, so it was always around. I was always around it. It's kind of like my sons are going to be. It's just that's what they see every day. Your dad's either, my dad worked a real job and worked on race cars every night. So, when you're around it all the time, either you're going to get the itch and do it, or I've never really seen anything different. But so I started racing in '89, I think it was. My dad finally gave me the opportunity to start in a pro stock class, is what they called it, in West Liberty, Iowa. So raced that for 3 years, and then started in late model in '91 or so, right around there. And that's, I guess, the rest is history. Run local for quite a few years, and then started traveling around in '97, '98, started traveling a little bit. And I actually Started racing full-time, no other job to speak of, around 99, 2000, I guess. So I've been doing this 12, 13, 14 years now.
Well, Dan, you want to know what's crazy? Hey, Brian, this is Andrew Kosiski, by the way.
Hey, buddy.
I'm only 22 years old, but Brian, I remember a time when I was younger, when you first started doing the tour and stuff. It was actually not too much of it. We went down to Davenport there, and we were watching you race, and my dad used to just kick your butt all the time, but nowadays you beat us. I was just wondering, because you walked up to him and you said, Joe, do you think I'm good enough for this?
I might. I don't remember as many things as I probably should. I mean, I remember talking to, your dad and brothers, and I grew up watching them guys racing against them. Try to just kind of learn about racing in general, how guys, treat other guys on the track, and just, look at setups. I'm always trying to learn something, I guess, really. But yeah, that seems like a long time ago now.
Brian, how did you just up and decide this is what I'm going to do for a living? Nowadays, I couldn't see myself missing work. I mean, I couldn't afford to do it. I couldn't find the help. I just can't see anybody nowadays just going up and this is what I'm going to do for a living. How did you do it?
I just took steps. I guess, I think it's probably we all do something in our life where you don't figure, how did you end up doing it? It just, you inch yourself to, you get a little bit more, you have a little bit more success. You have a sponsor that gives you a little extra money the 1 year. It just, piece by piece, it took me, probably 10 years, 10 years, and with some help, Mike Sorber kind of helped me get over the hump back, in the early 2000s. I met some good people that really, just kind of gave me that extra little bit of money or just a little bit of assistance here and there, and then, never quit attitude, I guess. There's many times I thought, man, I should just go get a real job. But I had a real job years ago, and where I had to punch a time clock, and I was already using the grace period, so they kept giving me a hard time about that. I was like, well, I don't know, man, I'm having a hard time wanting to get up for a real job. Now, I will go work 12, 14, 16 hours on a race car if I have to, really without, any complaints. But so I guess to answer your question, it just kind of took over time. Here I am. I wouldn't know what to do, anything different, but I really don't want to go get a real job. I'd rather work more hours doing this, I guess.
Well, I call it a real job. The thing is, I see about it is it's got to be something you love in any job. And if you don't love your job, you're not going to do a good job at it. And this must be something you love because, like you said, to spend 12 and 14 and 16 hours, that's sometimes before you race the car. And then you race the car, and then you got to drive the next racetrack in some cases. So I understand what's going on there, but I think the real answer there is you got to love what you're doing, and you're loving it, it sounds like.
Oh, yeah. I mean, as well as I do, how many times did you drive up and down the road, Joe, and race and do what you did and went home and you had family that, there's so many other things besides just the race car and in just everyday life. So I'm just trying to balance all that and, be successful, be good to the fans that come up, appreciate the people that are there supporting us because obviously if we're fans watching racing, then you ain't going to get a paycheck. So I just try to be supportive and, like if there's a little kid or a guy, I mean, he might be one of the guys that's he's a fan of yours, and when he walks up, you go, oh, no, here he comes. But, that guy paid his money. He's bought shirts. I think all racers have them, and he loves you, and you just got to appreciate that about it and treat everybody with respect.
I had a guy like that was from over there in the Davenport area back when I was racing really good, and he called me Smoking Joe, and he would always talk about the satellites. You probably know the big guy, Mark. Followed me everywhere, and that guy, one day I'm trying to go through the pits at Davenport, and he's yelling out in front of me, in front of my motorhome and trailers. I'm going to, everybody get out of the way. Here comes Smoking Joe. Everybody get out of my way. Here comes Smoking Joe. And it would be like I was embarrassed trying to drive the truck through like I sent this guy out there. But the guy, he's a little bit on the slow side, but I'll tell you what, he was a heck of a race fan. He did not miss a day coming down or buying a T-shirt and trying to support everything you'd done. I mean, he'd come down with a hamburger and say, you need a hamburger or you need a pop? Just some of the greatest fans in the world come out of this sport.
Oh, yeah, exactly. I mean, they just, I love football, so I watch football all the time. And if it was a Steeler thing, I'm not that insane fan, but that's kind of my thing. I mean, when the Steelers play this time, well, obviously they're done now, but that's what I do. If I seen Roethlisberger or Troy Polamalu in a store, I wouldn't go up like some fans would, but I'd be in awe sitting there going, there they are. They're right there, So just goofy things like that, man.
Brian, you had mentioned here a couple minutes ago about balancing your family life and your racing and whatnot. And in the course of my 20 years of racing, I've seen a lot of racers come and go.
Oh, yeah.
With racing being a full-time gig for you, exactly how do you balance all that out where you don't get burned out on racing?
I'm guilty of getting burned out on racing a little bit, especially when success isn't there. You can't have success every week, man. You try to be as consistent as you can be. I mean, obviously some guys, and I've had times where I'm consistent. I don't know, man. I really how to explain that other than, we just try to make sure we're prepared to win the race. We're ready to win, tire-wise, the car-wise, and if it don't happen. I know the last couple of years is what's been helping me as I've gotten older is we come home on a Sunday. We go out on a friend's boat, and we go boating on Sunday on the river. Take me, my wife, and my kids, and we go have fun doing that. And then I just try to do things with my kids and wife during the week when I try to utilize my job from an 8 to 6, 8 to 7. Right now we're trying to finish a car, so it's been 8 to 7 or 8 every night. But just trying to make sure that my kids know me when they get 15, 16-year-old. I know what they're doing. I know what they're into. Stuff like that.
When they do get to be that age, do you see maybe something in Cruising Creed's eye that maybe they're going to follow in Dad's footsteps and take over racing the 15?
I don't know. We're watching so much football the last month or so. It's all about football, and I never did play football, so they're talking about whether it would be a running back or a quarterback or a free safety or whatever. That's the kind of conversations we're having. My one's Creed's 7 and Cruz is 10. During racing season, I think they want to. They just haven't got that itch to where it's live and die racing right now. So I honestly don't know. I just assume they were really good golfers. Because a set of golf clubs would be a lot cheaper than a race car.
and the payoff's actually pretty good too. I think if they could get to that step where they're exactly. It pays off a lot like winning a race, but you don't have to spend as much to win.
Exactly. Yeah.
Watch out, Tiger Woods! Here comes the Birkhofer boys.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. Thanks, man.
So, Brian, talk a little bit about some of the wins you've had. I'm looking at your stat page, and from 1998 on up, you've got plenty of big-time wins. Is there one win that sticks out, and you've thoroughly enjoyed putting that at the top of the list of victories?
I mean, this year was fun. I mean, winning out in I-80, I had number 1 out there. We've ran well out there. I like the track, and obviously with, the Kosiski family, it's fun to race with them guys, and the fan support and all that. It was really fun winning that night. Winning the World 100 again this year was a lot of fun. I felt like the only guy that, O'Neill broke, so you never know what would have happened if I could outrun him, but I felt like, our car was really good, and I drove my tail off that night. I felt like I earned the win, regardless of Don finishing or not. It's just usually them last ones. I mean, I enjoyed the Show Me the one year we won it. I mean, we had a dominant car. We had a dominant car at the dirt track in like 08. So I don't know. I just kind of look through each year. You kind of feel like, man, you really put a dominant performance on with all the heat there. Any win that all the heat's there, but then it's not easy to come and win a 5,000 to win. Over in there's 10,000 wins at West Liberty. And when Neil shows up, all the local kids, I call them yet because they're younger than me. Most of them, the Simpson boys and the Eckridges, and them guys ain't no easy, it ain't easy picking that even at your local track. You got to drive your tail off all the time. So, just getting a good paycheck every night, that's probably what I'm trying to do, obviously doing it for a living, but you still, winning's the most important thing, I guess, yet, but I like to get some money every night.
Freddie Smith told me years ago that it's better to go to the 20,000 to win races because the 30 cars you got to beat there. You go to the local show that's 3,000 to win. You got 30 cars that's there, and you don't know which one's going to beat you.
Exactly. That's a good point. I never heard that from Freddie, but Joe, that's about a perfect scenario right there. That's the perfect explanation to it.
Hey, you're going to be back again this year, I'm sure, for the Silver Dollar Nationals to try to repeat as the winner. I mean, I know you're the fans' favorite in the area around Omaha here. It seems like you're the favorite anyway. Most people you talk to, they're all for Birkhofer. When we go to Knoxville and listen to them in the stands, the people that come back from this way, you're like the local hero of the big guys. So I'm hoping this year when you come back that you have a good race, a good run. It wouldn't bother us any if you won it again, but I can't show a favoritism in order to say that I want you to be the winner. But Lucas Oil, how many races do you run a year with the Lucas Oil Series?
Probably. I mean, there's probably 70% of my schedule is Lucas Oil racing. I mean, I don't know what that entails, like how many races that would be. I guess it would be 20 to 24 races, 25, I guess.
So you're still doing that many Lucas Oil shows, okay? And then
I mean, I do a majority of them. I do a few World of Outlaws, but the way the schedules are, I mean, the Lucas Oil still kind of tries to keep the Midwest. They run a lot of Midwest shows. The World of Outlaws just don't really come to the Midwest as much.
Yep. They got their one swing that they do up through Minnesota and that's about it.
Yep.
Kyle, I've got to see you run once, and it was probably your best run I've seen yet with the 2012 Silver Dollar Nationals. You led a good majority of the race, and Scott Bloomquist was coming on right there at the end. What I wanted to know, you were sitting there and watching that, were you keeping an eye on him and picking up the pace towards the end, or were you just running your own line?
My car was really good when it was intermediate. As the track got pretty slick, the last part of the race, I was doing some stuff all throughout the year to try to tune on a new thing, and we were just kind of got going on it. And I needed to basically work on my right front spring combination. I think would have helped my car to last 30 laps, I would say. But, I mean, you can't. You just kind of try to just drive the line. If I tried to pin my car, I'd wheel spin worse. I had a guy in the front stretch there where all the career guys could kind of stand there. He was giving me somewhat of a lead. So I was trying to hustle through lap traffic and at least, pick one or something just to maybe that guy would, screw Scott up a little bit where, it cost him a second, give me a couple more laps, closer to the end of the race, before he caught me. So I knew we weren't as good at the end, but, I think we put ourselves in that position. We raced with Billy and, just got ourselves in position. But, I mean, if they're coming, I'm just trying to attack lap traffic and try to make it to where you got to get a barrier between me and him, make that guy have to pass him too. I don't know if that's the right way to look at it. It's just the way I try to approach it anyway. For
as long as you've been running and as long as you've been winning, is there any kind of an intimidation factor when you see a Jimmy Owens or a Scott Bloomquist in your rear view?
No. I mean, if they're there, their cars are pretty dominant or, pretty good. Obviously, their talent is off the charts. So if you make a mistake, they're going to make you pay. Hopefully your car is good enough and you can drive my car is good enough and I can just drive that line where, usually them guys aren't going to come up there and bank off you, knowing, oh, man, if the only way I'm going to pass him if I go in there and overdrive the car once, get into him, pass him. You're going to run into guys like that during the year. And I know some guys that travel the circuits out on the road. There's a few guys that they'll rough you up a little bit to get by, but for the most part, you just got that respect, value between each other. And, I'm more comfortable racing with some of them guys behind me than some of the others, I guess is what I'm trying to say.
Better to have them behind you than in front of you, right?
Well, if they're in front of you, you can chase them, make them have the pressure that you feel when you're at them,
Last question I got for you on the Silver Dollar Nationals. You're standing in victory lane. You're accepting your Silver Dollars, and I noticed, I'm not going to say who it was from, but there was a person standing behind your car taking pictures of your setup. Is that flattering or aggravating?
Well, first of all, I mean, I know the guy. I don't, he claims that he was just using the light on his, all these fancy phones, they got that light. Personally, I don't know. I would say that Scott probably told him to go up there, or else he just did it on his own, take a picture of my right rear tire, see how it was cut, knowing that we were going to go back next year to see, what tire wear I had, how mine was cut. He can assess his situation and then tackle this year coming up.
In 2013,
so,
right?
I don't know. I mean, hopefully if I go over and glance at their stuff once, they kind of let me do, glance at their tire wear somewhere. And as far as I'm concerned, let it go back and forth. If they want to cover things up, then I'll tackle that situation somewhere down the road.
We'll be right back on the front stretch. We're going to take a quick break and pay a couple of bills. We'll be back continuing our conversation with Brian Birkhofer as a part of the Legends of the Dirt series on AM 590, Omaha's ESPN Radio.
This is the front stretch on AM 590, powered by Kosiski Auto Parts. Quality used parts at an affordable price. Now, back to the front stretch.
Welcome back to the front stretch, presented by Kosiski Auto Parts, 51st and I Street. 731-4592 is the number you can call to hear that beautiful voice of Andrew Kosiski and Team PRP Get yourself some premium recycled parts. Get back on your car, get back on the road, and not have to pay an arm and a leg. Kosiski Auto Parts, 51st and I Street. Again, 731-4592. Talking with Brian Birkhofer as a part of the Legends of the Dirt series. Brian, a couple of weeks ago, we talked to a good friend of yours, Kelly Bowen. I'll pause for laughter there. We were talking with Kelly about some rivalries, and he talked about how you and him had a pretty good rivalry, and one thing he said, I got an audio clip I pulled from the interview, and I hope you can hear it. I think I've got enough buttons pushed, but I'm going to play it for you, what Kelly said.
Okay.
He could care less. If my face was on fire, he wouldn't stomp it out with a track cleat.
Yeah, one point. I think, off the racetrack, I think Kelly's a great guy. I think this is on the racetrack, he needs to get a bigger helmet at times because apparently something's
and we talked about that with him, and he said basically the same thing. He said when you guys were competing, you really didn't care for each other, and you didn't really be sending each other Christmas cards, but after the competition was over with, you guys have kind of had a mutual understanding of each other. Is there a rival that you had going and maybe still going today that when you come to a track and you see him parked up and ready to race that you've got a little extra motivation behind you?
Man, it's hard to say. You drive in, if it's a Lucas Oil race, you got to outrun O'Neill, Owens, Bloomquist, and I can name 3, 4, 5 other guys. Francis, I'm afraid to leave somebody out and upset them, but I guess, oh well. World of Outlaws, you got some other guys. You got Lanigan, McCready, Eckert, you got them guys. So I don't really think you can focus on one dude for the most part. I think you just got to focus on them as a group, going, okay, I got to outrun the Lucas Oil guys tonight. That's my motivation, or the World of Outlaw guys. Because I really don't run religiously with any of them for the most part. I don't know. No rivalry really. I mean, I used to have maybe back in the day, like Joe or something, Foley or somebody like that, or Joe. No rivalry, just knowing that's the heat that's there tonight. You got to be on your game to outrun them guys. So that's the way I look at it. At this time of year, I guess for the part of my career I am right now.
Maybe ask you after a race some night, and you'll have a different answer.
Well, yeah, it depends. Maybe it'll be. I know there's times if it's Don O'Neill and he's restarting a race, I just soon drive his left rear tire up over his head at times because of some of the stuff he pulls. But there's little things to But I respect O'Neill for his talent and what he does. But at times it's just they ain't worried about nobody but their own equipment, which is fine if that's their choice. But they just tear stuff up for no reason at times, and common sense would go a long ways with a lot of people if they just use it some.
Sometimes that's because they don't own their own equipment.
Oh, I know, and I've been a guy that's owned, for a long time, a majority amount of my own stuff. So
right,
I've always looked at it a different way than them guys that it's not my stuff. I'm not worried about it. I'll find another ride next week or next year. I just never had that mentality. Never had enough talent to be that guy that could throw my weight around it that way.
What do you think of the current economic state of the late model industry? And do you think it's a healthy, vibrant one? Where do you see it going from here?
Well, obviously, I don't think it's as healthy as it once was. The spec motor stuff, or even the crate engine stuff you hear, more towards the south. I think there's crate engines up through here. I think you guys got crate engines over there, right?
We have some, but we also have open motors also.
Yeah, and the thing is, like over here, there's a lot of spec engine stuff, which I mean, sometimes too many rules kills things as much as opening things up too much, I think. So, I mean, you're still going to have big races. You still got enough big-time racers that are driving around that are able to support these races. And, if you go, like, out there, obviously the Silver Nationals, being a big show, I mean, it's you just got to have enough of them. Maybe I'm just kind of just going mumbling here, but I think it's not as good as when it once was. But for me personally, I know what I have for a shop now, what I have for cars and equipment. Obviously, it can't be too bad because I'm doing this with what sponsors I have on my own. I don't have a rich guy owning my stuff. I don't have that opportunity, so I think it's doing well. I just think it's just going in a transitional phase of a little something different. I think people, the modified deal's growing a bunch. So, you got too many things to steal money, I guess.
Are you still building cars in, or are they all for yourself?
I do. I've actually just I'm finishing a car right now for a guy to go to Arizona. Jimmy and Chris Mars, who I partnered up with, years ago. And them guys have built built a lot of late models. They're into the modified business. They built quite a few of the new modifieds. It's an MB Custom Modified, which is doing very well. But like Jimmy said, the modified deal, it's bigger than the late model deal. He said, there's more demand, and the money's pretty good. And I'm amazed what them modified guys will spend on them cars. So it's pretty amazing what them guys will spend.
Do you have any cars for sale?
I don't have any. I sold the one car I was going to quit racing. I sold it, so I have no used cars right now for sale.
Careful, Joe. If Andrew wants to buy a car, he might be coming to the bank of Father Joe.
There you go.
Don't stick your foot in your mouth.
You're Auto Father 4, isn't that what they say?
The excuse to Andrew's going to be, I just bought another track. I can't afford a car. We've been giving Joe crap because there's rumors going around that he keeps buying up all these tracks around here.
And Joe told him it'll be a cold day somewhere else besides heaven before I buy another track.
Yeah.
Brian,
hey, Joe, you did a good job. You did a great job racing. You did a great job with racetrack, Joe. That's all I can say.
Thank you, Brian.
Brian, what does 2013 look like for you as far as your schedule? Have you kind of figured it out yet, or are you still enjoying the off season? As far as we recorded this obviously back in January, but it airs a month later. So when we recorded this, what are your plans for 2013?
Pretty much the same stuff. I'm going to hit all the big races that we've hit in the past, and then I'll fill in the rest of the year with Summer Nationals, Lucas Oil races, World of Outlaw, maybe some open shows, which I'm not sure anymore. They're few and far between, especially in Iowa. I only race in Iowa 3 or 4 times a year now, so just the similar stuff. And then we'll kind of go from there. Unless, when it rains out one, you get a little more itch. You might have to drive a little farther to go race something else. But I hopefully that we're going to keep to the schedule and we'll have a successful one.
2014, 2015 rolls around and someone offers you a ride in maybe a World of Outlaw sprint car or maybe even like an ARCA car. Would that be something you'd be interested in, or are you pretty happy with being down in the dirt series?
Well, I'd listen to anything, but there's no way that would happen. I'm at that age where they're not going to try to get something. It's not like I'm some young guy trying to go do anything different.
Well,
sprint cars, probably no way. ARCA car, any of that. I think I'm pretty much set on what I'm going to do the rest of my life, my career.
Let's say old Joe Kosiski's going to put together a truck for you to race at Eldora. Would you hop down in it?
That's going to be interesting.
That is very interesting.
I mean, Brian wasn't last winter, but Joe's not an owner of a truck series. But if there was a truck series owner, Brian, that contacted you knowing you won the last World 100 there, what would you consider about running the truck at Eldora?
Oh, I'd probably listen to whatever was said. I definitely listened to it. I mean, I watched them guys drive around there, and I drove around the place. I'd listen to whatever somebody was going to, thinking about doing, and then go from there.
He went from his life was already done and filled in to he would listen now. So see there, Dan, it does work.
There's some pretty good dollar signs when you sit behind a Camping World Truck Series truck.
Yeah, that's true.
Pretty good dollar signs. But Brian, we really appreciate.
I'd like to sit in one just to see what they feel like being. I drive a truck every day. Maybe I could try that one.
There you go. Brian, we really appreciate you being a part of it, and thank you for wrapping up the Legends of the Dirt series. Best of luck to you in 2013, and again, we appreciate you taking the time to talk with us.
Yeah, I appreciate it, and I got to say, though, it's kind of funny that you're calling Legends, and my name in Legends, that doesn't sound right, so I appreciate you having me on, guys.
Well, a couple of these guys, as you kind of brought up, maybe you're not a legend yet, but I think once you do retire, you'll graduate to that position, so we went ahead and threw you in there because you do deserve to be in there. I mean, you've won enough races, you've done your part that if this continues, I think you are going to be one of those legendary guys.
Well, I think if it wasn't for you, Brian, we wouldn't have half the crowd at the Silver Dollar Nationals each year. You're a big part here.
Well, I appreciate it, man. Like I said, you got to treat the fans good, man.
You could almost call the Silver Dollar Nationals the Berkey Invitational.
Yeah,
his boys will be out back giving golf lessons.
You got to throw in a comment every once in a while about having a beer. Not to offend anybody, but if you throw in a comment about having a beer, there's a lot of people that like to have a beer.
There's a lot of people that like to have a beer at that place.
And next year when you come to the Silver Dollar Nationals, there's a golf course just a mile to the north, about a mile and a half to the north of us there is a golf course. So if you want to go
golfing,
I
need to come a day early so I can have a few beers and golf, then worry about racing after that.
There you go. That's what I'm trying to say.
But hey, as long as it ain't 150 degrees.
Well, I'm hoping next year ain't as hot as it was this year. This year was just treacherous.
You know what? If it's that hot and we can win again, I'll take it.
Brian, hope to see you at the 2013 Silver Dollar Nationals. Again, thanks for joining us, and have a great time.
All right, guys. Thank you. Thanks for having me on.
And again, that was Brian Birkhofer as a part of the Legends of the Dirt series. We want to thank all the drivers who joined us. If you missed any of the interviews, head to our Facebook page, The Front Stretch, presented by Kosiski Auto Parts. We have all of the audio posted on YouTube. You can go back and listen to those. We had some great interviews this year, and we thank everybody who joined us, and we thank you for your support. In just a few hours, the Daytona 500 kicks off, so get down to Quaker Steak and Lube. You can come and join us. Front Stretch boys will be down there doing our best to relieve them of as much beer as we possibly can. Me, 2, 3 before I'm going to have to be carried
Andrew
out.
and I a case.
Right. You guys can definitely hold your own. Me, however, I cannot. In the meantime, guys, what did you guys do in the offseason? Big change for you, bud?
New bodies on the cars, new wraps, new uniform, helmet wrap. We got a couple sponsors. Kurt Slater Sarge is known with Slater-sponsored Racing Family.
You're racing at?
Denison and Eagle Raceway predominantly with 8 shows at I-80 this year.
All right. Andrew, what about you in the offseason?
We changed series and we run the full SLMR schedule. Friday night SLMR, changed my number. Finally picked up 2 sponsors.
What number are you going?
Yeah, what number are you going to be running?
Big 53.
You got the 53.
The big 53. That'll
right.
It's on the car. It's on the new fire suit. And then last year I had 0 sponsors. Right now I got 2 that I know of, and I hope to get more. If anybody wants to sponsor a race car, please let me know. I need your help.
I'm really excited about this season, too, because I think I'm going to tour with you as a part of the SLMR series and help you out on your crew, learn a little bit about these cars, and maybe I can learn one day how to change my own oil, so we'll figure it out. Anything else, guys? Are we missing anything? We forget anything?
The one thing I do want to do is I want to, on behalf of the Front Stretch, I want to send our condolences out to Lisa Goki, Mike Goki. They are the car owner of Dylan Smith, the Osceola Rocket number 95 modified. Mm-hmm. Their beloved Great Dane Diesel, as he is well known nationwide. He passed away of pancreatitis. And a lot of people are, and even you mentioned, Dan, well, he was a dog. And
he wasn't a dog. He was a friend. He was really a member of the crew. He had his own merchandise. He's been in more victory lanes than I think me and Bud have combined.
Well, we sent out our condolences to him and to their family for their loss. So, and it's a loss in the racing community. If you didn't know Diesel, you missed out. I know I missed out. So, thank you so much for listening. This has been the Front Stretch. We'll see you at the track.